Hey everybody. Every year I kind of do a year-end message and this is no different, I guess. Sitting here at the end of December 2025. Been an unbelievable year, I think. So much going on. Politics, business, geopolitical conflict, resolutions. It's been, I think, quite a year. AI certainly dominated the conversation business wise in 2025. I feel like it crept up on everybody. The space economy, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, stable coins, the need for energy and power, data centers. They're talking about putting data centers in space, which is just like unbelievable. I guess it's like the perfect atmosphere to have a data center. One side is always cooling, the other side is in the sun. I don't know. What do I know? But I'm sure it's all going to come true, probably sooner rather than later. The one thing I would say about the US, though, is we continue to innovate like no other country. I mean, I get that capitalism is under fire. I think I know why, but ultimately it pulls people out of poverty. It makes us the world leader, and, we can certainly improve upon it, but I think it's the best system in the world and has resulted in tremendous value creation, tremendous innovation, and I think, again, we're at the forefront of technology as usual. I think good news for the market into 2026. It looks like we're in a cycle of rate cuts, trending downward, and the stock market is doing really well. And, I think that's been really great for ICR Capital, in particular, our convertible bond advisory business, which was really on fire in 2025. It seems like most companies now have or are evaluating, a convert in their cap structure. And I'm not sure why you wouldn't with the terms that companies are getting these days. So that's really interesting. In this environment, IPOs also are going to be making a comeback. I think they just have to. 2021 was kind of the crescendo where everything that wasn't nailed to the floor got sold, whether it was SPACs or IPOs, just completely manic year. And then things just stopped, for going on, 4 years now. And I think private equity needs to return capital to their LPs. That just has to happen. And if they're going to raise new money, they've got to give liquidity to their shareholders. And so what we're seeing at ICR Capital is tremendous activity in the IPO market. Companies are getting ready. And I think it's key, for private equity firms who might be listening, or for companies, we're kind of framing up what we do ahead of an IPO as liquidity communications. And that's basically elevating the brand, getting it out there, getting the narrative out there that you want, and certainly creating a digital footprint where, in addition to the data room, any buyers of an IPO are going to do diligence online. You want to have a good footprint in terms of media and articles written about companies. And generally, you want to get the exact narrative out there that you want. The last thing you want is to kind of go through a roadshow and sell part of a company, and you kind of feel like investors didn't fully get it. That's on you. So I think engaging with a firm like ICR or somebody else to kind of get the word out there is really critical in advance of liquidity transaction, which is so incredibly important. I think for existing public and private companies, there's so much chaos and noise. You just have to be out there relentlessly telling your story and be on offense all the time. And so, I think companies that kind of sit back and they don't talk and they're scared of the media and all that. I kind of get that, but you just have to tell your story, or else someone else is going to tell it and they're going to get it wrong and you're not going to like it. I'll footnote Michael Fox on that one, but that's a line we use all the time, and I think it's incredibly true. I think the other part of being on offense and telling the story is perception and credibility and reputation and all those good things. I think that you want to have, whether you're private or public, you want to have a full valuation on the company that gets the best employees and, the best business partners. And the reality is, untold opportunities come your way when you have that, that reputation in the market, and a lot of reinvestment opportunities. Not a lot of companies can say that. So the best companies out there, I think they're on offense all the time, telling their story, and they're very, very honest and credible about it and authentic. And I think sometimes you can't just do that internally because you're too close to it. Having an outside perspective is pretty good. I think public companies in particular, it's incredibly important, and understanding Wall Street is key, particularly as a public CEO. You're going to be judged by the stock price, full stop. You certainly want to be a good corporate citizen and, stakeholder communications and, a lot of people to please. But the reality is if you can't create value, you're probably not going to be around for a long time. And so I think Wall Street is the tip of the spear, comms-wise, is incredibly important, and I think all other communications certainly will be tailored to different audiences. But you have to really take into consideration, if you're a public company, what stakes you're putting in the ground. How do you back that up with data points of proof that you're doing what you say you're going to do, and creating value for shareholders. So, I think that, not to make this a big ICR commercial, but I guess it is, I think our platform, Strategic Communications and Advisory, is really valuable, particularly for new CEOs of public companies. Any little misstep can really derail things and spiral out of control. So, whether it's investor communications, business financial media, crisis preparation, management, governance, and all the other things that come with being a great public company. Incredibly important. So I guess in closing, very thankful for 2025, very hopeful for 2026. At the end of 2025 is 27 years at ICR. Never could have dreamed that the company would be around this long, let alone as big and consequential as it is. Could never have dreamt that big, and I think that's pretty cool. So with the new year always comes a lot of hope. And January in particular comes with a lot of hope around the ICR conference. We'll see you down in Orlando for what has been called the Super Bowl of consumer conferences. So we're really proud of that. Everybody's really upbeat, ready to go and get after it for another year. Have a great holiday season. An extraordinary thank you to our clients who trust us with their reputation. A huge thank you to everyone that works at ICR. Everyone is just really nice and cool and absolute killers in business. And I'm very proud of every one of them. So we'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.